Hello guys, Hail Given. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Read to Rise audiobook. Today's we're exploring the Atomic Habits by James Clear audiobook summary. So put on your headphone and enjoy the journey.
Atomic Habit by James Clear. Start this book. If you also face these 3 problems, then you must listen to this entire book. First point, do you ever ask yourself, have you ever tried hard to change your life, but then return to your old habits after a few days? Do you feel that bad habits are formed without effort, but good habits require a lot of effort? Do you feel that you fail every time because of a lack of discipline? Have you ever stopped for a moment and wondered how the tiniest of habits quietly, almost invisibly, reshape the path of our lives? Imagine with me for a second. Success is not a grand, sudden leap. It is the gentle accumulation of small choices, day after day. That's the gentle, steady idea that threads through everything we'll explore together. A thought that James Clear helped make plain. When you improve just 1% a day, you don't merely add up small wins, you change your trajectory. Think about that, 1%. It seems trivial at breakfast, barely noticeable by lunchtime, but by the time a year has rounded its corner, that tiny, steady nudge leaves you remarkably different. Picture yourself on a long flight, the kind that cuts across time zones. The pilot, correcting for a small drift, nudges the plane just 3.5 degrees. If you're sitting inside, you feel nothing. You might sip your coffee, glance out at clouds, and think the journey is unchanged. But that small alignment means the plane will not land where it would have otherwise. Instead of arriving in New York, it touches down in Washington, D.C. A tiny shift in direction, multiplied over miles, makes an entirely different destination possible. This is the quiet power of small habits. When we change the small, habitual things, we don't see dramatic results immediately. They are subtle, patient, compounding, and over time they become the reason our whole lives look different. Habits are the brain's automatic mode. Remember the first time you learned to drive? Everything needed your full attention. Clutch, gear, brake, turn signal. Each action was deliberate. But with practice, the movements smoothed out, and one day you realized you could hum a song while driving and still make it to your destination. That is the point. Habits are the brain's way of conserving energy. They take the daily grind of decisions and turn them into something automatic, so your mind can use its bandwidth elsewhere. But this economy of attention is a double-edged sword. When our habits are aligned with our goals, they become our greatest ally. When they are not, they quietly become our largest obstacles. Let me share with you the heartbeat of this approach, the 1% principle. Try, if you will, to imagine improving by just 1% each day. The math is gentle but startling. Small improvements compound. A single percent every day doesn't sound like much, but over time it magnifies. Conversely, a 1% decline each day is the silent thief of progress. If you let small negative slips accumulate, they can erode your outcomes until you find yourself back where you started, or worse. This is not about dramatic overhaul. It's about relentless, patient refinement. I want you to meet Rohan for a moment. Rohan was an ordinary office worker, the kind of person who came home tired, who appreciated the small comforts of evenings in front of the television. One day he stopped for chips and a cold drink on his way home, and that small convenience crept into routine. It felt like rest at first, it felt deserved. But months later, Rohan noticed his energy lagging, his weight creeping up, the morning sparkle gone from his step. What began as a tiny ritual now had firm roots in his life, and he was living the consequences. This is how bad habits often take hold. Small, pleasurable, immediate rewards build neural paths that the brain prefers because they save effort. The long-term cost? Often invisible at the outset, painfully obvious later. James Clear introduces a clear structure for how habits form. There are 4 stages: the cue, the craving, the response, and the reward. First comes the cue, the signal that tells your brain there's an opportunity for a choice. That cue produces a craving, a motivational force that pushes you toward some action. Then you act. That's the response. Finally, you receive the reward, the satisfying ending that teaches your brain to remember the pattern. Repeat the loop often enough, and the pattern becomes a habit. Once you see these steps, everything about behavior starts to make sense. What triggers it, why you feel the urge, what you reach for, and the payoff that seals the deal. So the big question arrives, can habits be changed? Thankfully, yes. But change requires comprehension of those 4 steps. To break a bad habit, you can start by identifying the cue and changing your response. To build a good habit, shape the cycle so that the cue is obvious, the craving attractive, the response easy, and the reward satisfying. Think of it as redesigning the environment and the emotions around an action, rather than simply trying to force willpower. Let me tell you another story, a hopeful one. Ravi, a software engineer, found his life unmoored. Irregular work hours, neglected health, a sense of drift. One morning, fed up with the chaos, he decided to choose differently. He committed to waking up earlier, to a few minutes of exercise, and to reading one chapter of a book every day. The first week felt heavy, the newness demanded effort. But he kept at it, and very soon those tiny acts stitched into the fabric of his mornings. Months later, Ravi's life had quietly but unmistakably shifted. More energy, clearer focus, a sense that he was steering his own days. This is the shape of good habits becoming allies. James Clear breaks habit building down into 4 simple, actionable rules that are surprisingly kind. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. Make it obvious means you place the cue where it can't be missed. If you want to read in the morning, keep the book on the pillow. If you want to drink more water, let a bottle sit on your desk. Make it attractive means pairing the habit with something you enjoy. If you dread that early walk, bring along music or a podcast you love. Make it easy is about shrinking the barrier to start. If jogging seems daunting, begin by walking for 5 minutes. Make it satisfying involves giving yourself a small, immediate reward, a calendar checkmark, a quiet moment of pride, so your brain registers that completion is pleasant. There's a guiding idea that runs like a quiet river through all of this. Systems beat goals. Goals give you direction, sure, but systems are what get you there day after day. If your aim is to lose weight, writing down lose 10 kilos is fine, but creating a system, a daily routine of mindful eating and regular movement, is what actually changes your life. Goals can win you a trophy once. Systems bring repeatable victories. Shift your energy from chasing outcomes to designing the process that makes the outcomes inevitable. And because you're listening to this, maybe you've wondered, what should you do right now? Start small. Schedule a small slice of time for the habit you want to build. Don't attempt an overhaul. Tiny, repeatable wins are your allies. Avoid trying to do them all at once. Habit change isn't a sprint of willpower. It's a patient remodeling of how your days run. Pick one small habit, make it simple, make it obvious, make it pleasurable, and let time do the rest. You might be thinking about a habit you'd like to break. Think of Raj, a college student who spent hours on social media and watched his studies drift. He deleted the apps, set a specific study time, promised himself a small reward at the end of the week, and whenever temptation rose he paused, took a breath, and asked himself if that moment served his goal. Months later, Raj didn't just clear his social media habit. He climbed up the ranks to become one of the top students. The point isn't about moralizing about habits. It's about understanding them and learning to steer them. So now, friend, imagine for yourself. What single tiny habit could you begin today that, repeated over months, would steer you toward a different horizon? Maybe it's 10 minutes of reading, a short walk after lunch, a glass of water upon waking. It seems small now, almost laughably small. Yet like that slight turn of the plane's wheel, a small consistent change compounds into a new destination. Now let's keep going. Think for a moment about how you would design your life if you treated habits like tiny, powerful machines you could tune, place, and maintain. The next layer of this idea is simple and practical. Make the habit obvious. That means arranging the world so the cue for the habit is visible and unavoidable. If you want to read in the morning, set the book where you can see it the moment you wake. If you want to drink more water, place bottles in every corner of the house. A cue that hides will rarely spark action. A cue that stands where your eyes naturally fall begins the work for you. Habit stacking helps here. Attach the new thing you want to do to something you already do. After I make my morning tea, I will read 2 pages. After I brush my teeth, I will do a 2-minute stretch. Small, intentional connections like these make the right thing take the same path as the things you already do. Now imagine attraction. We are all drawn toward what feels pleasant. That's why to make a habit stick, we must learn to make it attractive. James Clear calls this temptation bundling. Pairing a habit you need with an activity you desire. If walking feels tedious, bring the podcast you love. If studying feels dry, promise yourself 10 minutes of something enjoyable after an hour of focused work. The key is not to trick yourself, it's to align emotions with action. When a habit begins to carry a hint of pleasure, your brain begins to look forward to it. And what once felt like a chore slowly wears the guise of something inviting. Next, make it easy. The truth is that complexity kills momentum. When a habit feels hard to begin, we excuse ourselves. So shrink the start until it is almost laughably small. Want to run? Put on your shoes and step outside, even if you walk for 5 minutes. Want to meditate? Close your eyes for 2 minutes. This is the 2-minute rule, and it works because starting is the hardest part. Once you begin, continuation becomes far simpler. Reduce friction by removing steps between you and the habit. Lay out the clothes, prepare the water bottle, keep your journal on the bedside table. The simpler the pathway, the fewer decisions your tired brain has to make when willpower is thin, and the more likely you are to follow through. And then make it satisfying. The human brain is wired to repeat actions that feel rewarding. A habit that ends with a little immediate satisfaction will loop itself into your life far faster than one that promises only distant results. Reward yourself in small, tangible ways. Put a mark on a calendar, give yourself a quiet moment of pride, celebrate silently knowing you did what you promised. Those small rewards tell your brain this behavior is worth remembering. Over time, the repetition builds neural pathways that turn choice into default. Don't underestimate the power of a single calendar tick. Over weeks and months, that satisfaction becomes the scaffolding of a new identity. Let us pause and consider the flip side, breaking bad habits. If you want to stop a harmful behavior, you can apply the inverse logic. Make the cue invisible. Remove tempting triggers from your environment. If sugary snacks are your undoing, don't keep them in the kitchen. Make the habit unattractive by reminding yourself of its long-term cost. Consider what smoking does to your lungs, what mindless scrolling does to your focus. Add friction to make it difficult. Require an extra step to access the behavior, and suddenly convenience abandons it. Make continuation unsatisfying by introducing an accountability mechanism. Tell a friend you'll pay them if you slip, or sign a pledge that costs you something when you break it. Change the reward structure, and you change the loop. Identity is the deeper territory that habit work ultimately reaches. When you begin to speak of yourself differently, your habits follow. Say, "I am a reader," and you will find yourself reading. Say, "I am someone who exercises," and you will find yourself moving. Small actions are votes for the type of person you wish to become. Each time you do the thing, you cast another vote. Over days, weeks, and years, those votes accumulate until the identity you desire becomes the identity you inhabit. This is not vague self-help. It is quietly practical. Start by deciding who you want to be. Then ask, what would that person do right now? Do that, then do it again. There are stories tucked into this method that make it human. Think of the student who stopped using social media apps, scheduled study hours, and claimed a small weekly reward. He didn't just dislodge a distraction. He changed how he used his time and rose in his class. Or remember Rima, who kept her phone in another room during study time and slowly found space for reading and exercise that she hadn't had before. These are not extraordinary people with superhuman discipline. They were people who rearranged small things into a life that supported the person they wanted to become. We also face plateaus and relapses. This is natural. Early excitement fades, obstacles emerge, and motivation dips. But systems endure in that weather. The task is to return to the smallest action you promised yourself. When you stumble, begin again. Track progress in a visible way. Marking the days you follow through builds momentum you can see. Keep your standards kind but steady. Aim for consistency, not perfection. The habit compound is merciless in both directions. Small gains stack into big results, and small losses accumulate into large costs. The quiet power is choosing which direction you will let compound. So in these next moments, ask yourself what tiny change you can arrange today that will, when repeated, steer your life. Maybe it's 2 minutes of reading before bed, perhaps a single stretching motion after you brush your teeth, maybe an evening of preparing your outfit for the morning. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. If you must remove a bad habit, make its triggers invisible, add friction, and create accountability. Cast votes for the person you wish to become. Remember that systems, not goals alone, will carry you forward. Think with me now about the quiet architecture that holds habits in place. The environment, the cues, the little bridges you build between what you already do and what you want to become. When you begin to arrange your surroundings with purpose, you don't rely so much on willpower. You rely on design. Leave your running shoes by the bed, and the morning becomes an invitation. Place your book on the pillow, and the book asks less of you to be opened. These are simple moves, but they change the battleground. Instead of fighting temptation with effort, you remove temptation by shaping the stage. Habit stacking, the small practice of tacking a new action onto an existing routine, is one of those clever scaffolds. After you make your morning tea, read 2 pages. After you brush your teeth, do a 2-minute stretch. The new acts hitch a ride on the old, and over time they take their place naturally. There is something almost human about making a habit attractive. Pleasure calls to us, and the brain pays attention to what promises reward. So if you want to make a habit stick, give it a bit of pleasure up front. Pair an activity you need with something you want. If walking feels dull, bring the podcast that always makes you smile. If studying is dry, allow yourself a small treat afterwards. This idea of bundling temptation with duty is not trickery. It's alignment. It helps you feel that the thing you must do is also something you might want to do. When your habits carry a whisper of enjoyment, your mind stops fighting and starts anticipating. But even pleasure can be a poor ally if the habit is hard to begin. That's where making it easy becomes an art. Shrink the threshold to begin until it is almost embarrassingly small. Want to meditate? Close your eyes for 2 minutes. Want to write? Open your notebook and write one sentence. These tiny starts obey a simple truth. Starting is the friction point. Once you cross it, continuation becomes feasible. Remove as many steps as you can between you and the action. Prep the clothes for tomorrow. Set the water bottle out. Put the journal where your hand naturally falls. The fewer decisions you must make in the moment, the more likely the habit will win. And then, importantly, make completion feel satisfying. Our brains prioritize what is rewarding, even in small ways. Give yourself an immediate, tangible sign that you followed through. Draw a tick on a calendar, savor a quiet moment of pride, tell a friend about your small success. That fleeting satisfaction trains your brain to remember the loop and choose it again. Over time, those micro-rewards accumulate into sturdy neural pathways that transform choice into default. Now consider the inverse: how to dissolve the habits that pull you off course. Take the same building blocks, cue, craving, response, reward, and flip them. Hide the cue so the impulse never arises. If late-night snacking is your weakness, don't keep chips on the shelf. Make the action unattractive by focusing on the long-term cost. Remind yourself how that cigarette wounds the lungs, how that endless scrolling steals time. Introduce friction. Make the habit harder to start by adding steps between impulse and action. And finally, make the outcome unsatisfying by adding accountability. Tell someone you trust that you will be stopped if you slip. When you rearrange the loop this way, the bad pattern loses momentum and decays. Let's dwell a moment on identity, because it is the quiet engine that powers lasting change. Habits are more than actions. They are votes for the person you want to be. Every choice you make is a ballot cast toward an identity. When you tell yourself, "I am a reader," the act of reading ceases to be a chore and becomes evidence of who you are. Each small win reinforces the story you tell about yourself, and that story in turn shapes the actions you take. So begin by deciding who you want to be. Then design tiny behaviors that person would do. Do those behaviors. Each repetition is proof. Over time, the repetition cements identity, and the habits follow naturally. Stories help this feel alive. There was the student who, tired of distraction, deleted social apps and set a fixed study time. At first it felt austere, then practical, and soon his grades rose. There was the woman who placed her phone in another room at night and discovered that without that device stealing minutes, she had time to read and to move. These are not tales of superhuman will. They are examples of people changing small things in their lives until the living of the days matched the person they wanted to be. You will stumble, and when you do, be gentle but purposeful. Early enthusiasm fades for everyone. Obstacles appear. Motivation dips. The discipline that matters most is the discipline to return to the smallest promise you made to yourself. Keep a visible record. Mark the days you follow through. Streaks matter because they let you see that you can. And when you fail, remember the counterintuitive truth. Missing once does not make you a failure, but missing twice can start a cascade. So after a slip, begin again without moralizing. Restarting is a small but powerful habit in itself. There are a few tools that make this process easier. The 2-minute rule turns enormous projects into manageable starts. Any habit can be scaled down to something you can do in 2 minutes. This lowers the activation energy. The habit stacking method ties new actions to existing patterns, so they gain leverage. Tracking progress, whether on paper or in an app, turns invisible effort into visible momentum. Creating strong cues, designing the environment to favor the desired action, and removing easy access to distractions are practical moves that conserve willpower for the moments it matters. Think about the long arc habits are patient. Their power is in compounding. Small improvements stack. 10 minutes of reading a day becomes hundreds of hours over a year. A short walk every morning becomes the foundation of fitness. What seems insignificant now compounds into life-altering changes later. The choice you make this minute, when repeated, will tilt your life a little bit. Those tilts add up into entirely different landscapes. There is a final tenderness to all of this. The work of habit building is not about perfect self-control, but about kindness to the future you. It is designing a world that makes it easy for the person you will become to thrive. Choose the small actions that, when added day after day, will be the quiet scaffolding of your best life. Keep the process simple, stay patient, and remember that identity grows through evidence. Start small, design kindly, and let the compound effect do the rest. There is a gentle truth I want you to hold close as we move forward. Habits are not rigid chains meant to bind you. they are tools you fashion. When life throws a curveball, the person who has built habits wisely can bend without breaking. Think of habits as flexible rails rather than prison bars. If one day your routine slips because of an unexpected meeting or a storm that keeps you inside, that does not mean the habits have failed. It means you need a plan for weather. Forgiveness and restartability are part of mastery. Be kind to yourself when life interrupts your streaks. Learn to resume rather than to punish. This is the art of habit resilience, the ability to return to the practice and keep moving forward. Now, imagine turning the abstract idea of habit into something practical you can use every morning. Begin by choosing a tiny action that proves the identity you seek. If you want to be fit, say to yourself, "I am a healthy person," and then do one small thing that confirms that identity. Put on your shoes and walk to the door. If you want to be a writer, claim, "I am a writer," and write a single sentence. These are not theatrical slogans. They are evidence you collect about who you are becoming. Each small action is a vote, and when you cast enough votes in one direction, the tally becomes your new self. There is also an invisible architecture to how habits ripple through our lives. One small positive behavior often nudges other parts of your life into alignment. If you begin to eat healthier, you might sleep better. If you read a little every day, you may start thinking more clearly and discover new ideas that change your work. Habits do not exist in isolation. They produce ripple effects. That is why tiny, consistent improvements matter more than occasional grand gestures. The compounds of small actions create outcomes that surprise us if we are patient enough to let them grow. You'll hear people say, "I don't have time," and yet what they usually mean is, "I haven't decided this is a priority." The secret then is to structure your environment so the decision is already made for you. Keep healthy food at eye level in the fridge, remove the junk that tempts you. Place your workout gear where you will see it first thing. Small design moves make the right actions easier and the wrong ones harder. When the world nudges you toward good behavior, you are simply following a path somebody thoughtfully laid. That somebody should be you. In the quiet of daily practice, internal rewards matter more than applause. External praise can be wonderful, but it fades. What lasts is the small satisfaction that arises from keeping your promise to yourself. This internal reinforcement is steady and intimate. Learn to savor the private moment when you completed what you set out to do. That tiny satisfaction is the seed of long-lasting habits. It will not show up as a trophy, but it will show up as confidence, as the steady sense that you can count on yourself. Let us be candid about setbacks. They will come, and they will sting. You will miss days, and that is not failure. It is opportunity. The critical thing is what you do next. Restarting is the skill. Make the restart easy. Keep the habit small enough that beginning again feels manageable. Track the days you succeed. The visual streak on a calendar is more motivating than a distant promise. When you can see progress with your own eyes, you are less likely to be tempted to give up. There is a profound freedom in designing systems instead of chasing goals. Goals point the arrow, but systems build the bow and teach you how to draw it. When the unit of change is the daily process, the system, then you make progress regardless of the unpredictable results. People who practice this understand that excellence is not a single act, but a pattern of tiny behaviors. Each day's small choice is not merely about immediate pleasure or pain. It is a thread woven into the long fabric of who you become. Consider mastery not as an endpoint, but as a long conversation with your craft. Mastery asks for patience and for repetition without glamour. It asks you to return to the work even when novelty fades. Over time, the repetition refines you. What begins as awkward, forced, and effortful becomes smoother, then effortless, and finally a part of your identity. The person who achieves mastery is not always the naturally talented. Quite often it is the person who kept showing up when others had given up. And finally, remember the compound effect. Small habits are like deposits into a savings account. Their interest compounds over time. 10 minutes of reading a day becomes hundreds of hours across the years. A brief stretch each morning becomes strength and mobility you will appreciate later. When you choose the tiny action repeatedly, you are deciding where your future self will stand. Choose subtly and choose kindly. Design a life where the smallest steps are aligned with the largest hopes you hold, and trust that consistency will do its quiet work. There is a particular kind of quiet wonder in watching small habits accumulate over months and years, and if you sit with that idea for a moment, you begin to see your life differently. Imagine, for a second, that every tiny habit you practice is a small deposit into a future you. 10 minutes of reading today is not merely 10 minutes. It is a seed that will grow into ideas, vocabulary, clarity of thought, and perhaps the sentence that changes a project or a life. A short walk each morning is not only movement. It is the slow building of stamina, better sleep, clearer moods, a steadier mind. Over time, these tiny deposits compound. That compound effect is the real engine behind the long-term results we all admire in others, but often misunderstand in ourselves. When a habit takes root, its effect rarely stays confined to that single corner of your life. One habit ripples outward like a stone dropped into still water. Its rings touch other areas. Start sleeping earlier and you may find your patience at work grows. Begin preparing meals instead of ordering in, and you might save money and feel more present at the table. Read more and your conversations change, your confidence grows, the ideas you have at meetings shift. Habits do not live in isolation. They interact, amplify one another, and if you arrange your small actions thoughtfully, you can create a life in which progress in one area naturally supports progress in another. Making habits stick is less about moral superiority and more about creating systems that survive the ordinary friction of life. Anchor them in a schedule, track them in a simple way, and make them a visible part of your day. You'll find that tracking is not punitive, it's clarifying. When you mark the days you show up, you make progress visible to yourself, and that visibility feeds motivation. The streak on the calendar, the growing column in your notebook, the file that holds all your short entries. These are tiny signposts that remind you the change is real. Over time, the accumulation of these marks becomes proof you can point to when doubt knocks at the door. There's an important caveat. The long-term work of habit building requires patience with the invisible. In the early months, you will likely feel like you are doing a lot for very little return. This is the hardest part, because human beings are wired to respond to immediate feedback. The trick is to trust the process. The compounding of small actions is stealthy. It rarely announces itself in dramatic form. Yet, left uninterrupted, it quietly composes your future. Think of it as quiet engineering of a life you will recognize later. And yes, the long-term picture includes the risks of neglect just as surely as it contains the rewards of repair. Small negative habits compound too. The incremental cost of a daily hour of distraction or a regular excuse to avoid work stacks into months and years of lost opportunity. This is the sobering mirror that sits beside the encouraging one. The same mechanics that allow small wins to become mastery can allow small slips to erode potential. That is why attention matters now, even when the payoff looks distant. Let us consider the cycle of success, not as an idealized ladder, but as a loop you can design. First comes belief. You must hold the implicit faith that change is possible. That belief is not mere optimism. It is the seed that starts action. Next comes thought and habit. Your thinking shapes your choices, and your choices build into routine. Third comes results. The outcomes that follow are feedback, and they inform your belief. When the loop favors progress, it becomes self-reinforcing. When it tilts away, you rebuild the system or adjust the inputs. The secret is to design this loop so that small victories feed belief, and belief feeds future action. Celebrate the small wins. Learn from the stumbles without letting them define you. There is a sort of quiet mastery that arrives for those who show up repeatedly with humility. Mastery is not glamorous, it is patient returning. It is the person who, year after year, does the small daily work that makes excellence inevitable. Mastery requires tolerance for repetition, willingness to be mediocre for a while, and a long view that values the accumulation of small improvements. It asks for tenacity that is not loud but steady, and for an approach that favors patience over flash. The person who masters habits is not always the one with the best starting point. Often it is the one who refuses to be defeated by ordinary days. If you want your habits to last a lifetime, aim to embed them into identity and into the systems that surround you. Habits that match your sense of who you are stick easier. When a habit becomes a part of how you think about yourself, when you say, "I am someone who reads," or "I am a person who moves each morning," then following through stops being a decision and becomes an expression of identity. Design your environment so it favors the identity you want. Remove temptations, place the cues plainly, and make the path toward the action the simplest route in the room. Your environment can be a silent ally if you build it with intention. And do not forget to be forgiving. Streaks will break. Plans will go sideways. When life interrupts your pattern, treat the break as a single event, not a verdict. Restart quickly, restart small, and let the momentum rise again. The resilience to resume is the same muscle you are cultivating through the habits themselves. In the end, the message is simple and tender. You do not need a grand overhaul to change your life. You need to start with something small, and be patient enough to let it grow. Each tiny habit is a quiet vote for the person you will become. Over time, those votes tally into identity, into capacity, into a life that aligns with the hopes you carry. The power of habits is not in dramatic overnight transformations, but in the slow, steady accumulation of tiny choices that together produce extraordinary results. So take a breath and look at your day with kind eyes. What one small action could you do today that your future self would thank you for? Place it where you will see it. Make it easy. Make it a bit enjoyable. Track it. Then do it again tomorrow. That is the gentle architecture of change, patient, practical, and profoundly human. There is a comforting, stubborn truth I want you to hold close as we walk together through this part of the story. Progress is rarely dramatic, but it is relentless when tended. Imagine a garden that you visit each morning. Some days you water a little, other days you pull a stubborn weed. Sometimes you forget, and a few leaves wilt. But over seasons, the patch that you tended, however inconsistently at first, begins to show growth that surprises you. Habits behave the same way. The small, seemingly insignificant things you do again and again are the quiet labor that builds the life you live. They don't always feel like victories in the instant, but they compound into a landscape that, months from now, looks unmistakably different from where you began. When life throws interruptions at you, and it will, what separates those who keep going from those who don't is not perfection, but the systems they've built to restart quickly. Imagine you miss a day. You might be tempted to see that single miss as a portent, an evidence of weakness. Don't. The skill you need is to restart without fanfare. Make the restart small. Make it near impossible to delay. If your habit is to read 10 pages every evening, and you miss a night, tomorrow open the book and read a single paragraph. That tiny act breaks the inertia. The more you practice restarting, the less power a lapse has to yank you off course. This is resilience by design, creating a life where recovery is simple and immediate. Now let us talk about the environment again, because it is the silent architect of your behavior. The world around you either helps the person you want to be, or it helps the person you're not trying to be. If you want more focus, design a workspace that invites focus. Clean desk, notes ready, distractions put out of reach. If you want to eat better, make your kitchen a friend of healthy choices. Don't underestimate how much easier a good habit becomes when the room itself nudges you in the right direction. Little shifts, placing your headphones by the door, leaving your running shoes visible, putting fruit where chips used to live, make the good choice the natural choice. You're not asking yourself to be a superhero each morning. You're simply making the good choice the path of least resistance. Let me remind you of the 2-minute rule, because it is such a practical ally. When a habit feels monumental, shrink it down to 2 minutes. This is not trivializing your ambition. It's engineering the beginning. 2 minutes of practice dissolves the excuse, "I don't have time." Once you've started, momentum often carries you forward. You'll discover that 2 minutes of gentle initiation can stretch into 20 or 40 or a sustainable daily practice. The rule is deceptively powerful because it removes psychological friction. Start small, then leverage the fact that continuation will often feel easier than stopping. Another powerful lever is to track what matters. Keep a simple log on a calendar, in a notebook, in an app, so you can see the days you kept your promise. Tracking does 2 things. It converts invisible effort into visible evidence, and it generates a gentle pressure to avoid breaking a streak. There is a quiet human desire not to break the line we've been drawing with our actions. That visual progress becomes its own feedback loop. It isn't the only source of motivation, but it's one of the most steadfast. Over time, the accumulating marks on a page feel like proof. You can do this again and again. It's also important to befriend the idea of experimentation. What works for one person may not work for you, and that's okay. Treat habit building like a laboratory. Try small adjustments. Change the time of day, tweak the environment, alter the reward. Observe, measure, iterate. If something consistently fails, don't treat that as moral failure. Treat it as data. Adjust and try again. This experimental mindset turns frustration into curiosity. You begin to ask better questions. What's getting in the way? Which tiny change might remove that friction? Over time, you learn to craft systems that fit the contours of your life instead of forcing a life to fit a particular method. There will be plateaus. After the honeymoon of a new habit fades, results can appear to stall. It feels demoralizing, but it's normal. The work you're doing is still real. Progress often happens beneath the surface during these periods. When you hit a plateau, revisit the fundamentals. Make the cue clearer, make the action easier, make the reward more immediate, and remember the identity question. Who are you becoming? Keep taking small, consistent actions. The compounding will reassert itself. Often, a patient, steady application of the basics is what pushes you through to the next level. Finally, hold tenderness for the person you are becoming. Habit work is not an act of self-criticism, it's an act of care. When you build systems that help your future self, you're offering kindness to the person who will live with the consequences of your choices. Speak to yourself as you would to someone you love who's trying. Notice progress, however small. Celebrate small wins without turning them into excuses for complacency. Embrace failures as instructors, not as identities. Over the long haul, this gentle persistence crafts a life that is less about willpower and more about design, less about momentary motivation, and more about a quietly reliable architecture that supports the person you want to be. There's a quiet, stubborn beauty to the way small habits accumulate over time, and if you let your mind sit with that for a moment, it changes how you look at today. Imagine each tiny action as a deposit into an account that pays compound interest in the currency of your life. 10 minutes of reading now is not merely 10 minutes. It's the seed for ideas, sharper language, a broader mind. A short walk every morning is not simply motion. It is the slow construction of stamina, improved sleep, steadier moods. These small acts compound. The real engine behind the long-term results we admire in others is not a single inspiring day, but the patient compounding of thousands of small, disciplined choices. When a habit takes root, its effects rarely stay confined to a single corner of your life. One habit ripples outward like a stone across a still pond. Start sleeping earlier, and you may find patience at work increasing, your decisions less reactive. Begin preparing meals and you might save money, eat more nutritiously, and feel calmer at dinner. Read consistently, and the conversations you have, the ideas you bring to a meeting, the confidence you show in a presentation all begin to shift. Habits interact and amplify one another. Arranged thoughtfully, they create a life in which progress in one place naturally supports progress in another. This is the real magic of compounding. A small nudge in one domain subtly reorients the rest. Making habits stick is not about moral superiority, and it's not about punishing yourself for being human. It's about designing systems that survive the ordinary friction of life. Anchor those habits in your schedule, track them in a simple way, and make them visible. Tracking is clarifying rather than punitive. When you mark the days you show up, you make the invisible visible, and that visibility fuels the next day's action. The streak on the calendar, the column filled in your notebook, the tiny file of entries you can point to. These are proof to your future self that change was possible. Over time, this accumulation of marks becomes a narrative you can rely on when doubt knocks. There is, I want to be clear, a cost to neglecting habits, just as there's a reward for tending them. Small negative choices compound too. An hour of unproductive scrolling each day becomes months and years of lost focus. A few skipped workouts become months of lower energy and missed opportunities. The same mechanism that builds mastery builds decline if left to chance. This dual edge is a sober reminder that attention now matters, precisely because the payoff takes time to show. The earlier you begin, the more the compound effect will bend in your favor. Think now about the cycle of success as something you can design: belief, action, feedback, and renewed belief. First comes belief, an implicit conviction that change is possible. That belief is the tiny seed that prompts action. Second comes thought and habit. Your patterns of thinking create choices, and those choices form routine. Third, results arrive as feedback, teaching and reshaping belief. When this loop favors progress, it becomes self-reinforcing. When it tilts away, you redesign the inputs. The practical task is to create the conditions where small wins strengthen belief, and belief fuels further small wins. Celebrate the tiny victories. Learn from the setbacks without letting them define you. Mastery in this light is less a peak and more a patient conversation with practice. To master a habit is to make it so deeply part of your life that it no longer demands heroic effort. Mastery asks for repetition without glamour, for returning again and again to the work when novelty has long faded. It requires tolerance for being mediocre in the early stages, the humility to practice when no one is watching, and the long view to value accumulation over flash. Often, mastery belongs not to the naturally gifted, but to the steady presences who keep showing up when enthusiasm is gone. If you want habits that last a lifetime, embed them into identity and into the systems that surround you. Habits that align with who you see yourself to be stick easier. When you say, "I am a reader," reading becomes not an option but an expression of identity. Design your environment to favor that identity. Remove temptations that contradict it and place cues that confirm it. Let your rooms, your schedule, your tools quietly align with who you want to be. Make the simplest route in any room the habit you want. When your surroundings cooperate, your future self has fewer battles to fight. And learn from failure in a way that is generous and pragmatic. Failures and interruptions will come. This is not a sign that you are broken, but that you are human and that life is living through you. The key is to treat a lapse as data, not destiny. Restart quickly. Make the restart small and simple. The 2-minute rule is a brilliant ally here. Shrink the threshold to begin so restarting feels trivial. Over time, the resilience to resume becomes one of the most important habits you build. There is a tenderness to this work that cannot be overstated. Habit building is not an act of self-criticism. It is an act of care for the person who will live with the consequences of your choices. Speak to yourself with the kindness of someone who wants the best for a friend. Notice the little improvements. Celebrate them without turning them into excuses. When you fall, learn and begin again. Over the long haul, this patient, forgiving persistence sculpts a life that is less about willpower and more about design, less about frantic motivation, and more about reliable architecture that supports the person you most want to become. So look at your day with kind eyes and quiet curiosity. What single small action could you take today that your future self would thank you for? Place it where you'll see it. Make it easy to start. Make it slightly enjoyable. Track it so the progress becomes visible. Then tomorrow, do it again. That is the gentle architecture of change. Humble, patient, profoundly human, and utterly transformative when practiced day after day. As we draw this conversation to a close, let me bring everything together for you in the kind of gentle, steady way that habits themselves prefer. One small, clear idea after another until the picture is complete. The most important thing to carry away is that the life you want is not built in a single moment of willpower or a dramatic overhaul. It is composed quietly, almost invisibly, by the tiny things you do each day and the systems you build to make those things natural. When you wake tomorrow and choose, however small the choice, you are not merely moving through a minute. You are casting a vote for the person you want to become. Each repetition, each tiny decision, stacks with the last until, months from now, you have a new reality that feels less like an achievement and more like who you are. This is the compound effect in action. Small deposits that, given time and consistency, become a wealth of capability and confidence. Understand that these deposits do not always announce themselves with fireworks. Often they are quiet. A little more sleep, a short walk, a paragraph read before bed, the removal of a tempting app from your phone. These small investments accumulate interest in ways your present self cannot immediately see, but your future self will feel, precisely, gratefully, deeply. Think of habits as the scaffolding of identity. When you begin to act like the person you want to be, when you speak to yourself in the language of possibility and then follow it with tiny, repeatable acts, you create evidence for that identity. Each day you follow through, you reinforce a story in your own mind that becomes easier and truer the more you practice it. This is how the abstract becomes the concrete. The sentence, "I am someone who reads," stops being a wish and becomes a fact because you have stacked enough reading minutes behind it. Identity-based habits are powerful because they do more than change what you do. They change how you think about who you are. And when your actions and your self-image align, the friction of decision diminishes. The habit ceases to be a battle and becomes simply the path you walk. Mastery grows out of the long, patient practice of doing the right small things, again and again. It demands a tolerance for repetition that many of us find uncomfortable at first, because modern life glamorizes leaps and overnight success. But real skill, real calm, and real capacity come from the slow accrual of tiny improvements. The person who masters a craft is often not the one who sprinted the fastest, but the one who returned to the work again and again, especially when motivation softened and applause faded. Mastery is less an endpoint and more a way of inhabiting time. a steady, unglamorous devotion to showing up. When you treat practice as your primary job, the results, subtle at first, then monumental over time, begin to arrive with the predictability of seasons. Designing systems is the practical heart of lasting change. Goals point the way. Goals give your life direction. But systems are the engines that make progress inevitable. Rather than obsessing over a single outcome, ask yourself what a day that matches your values would look like, and then design the smallest, simplest, repeatable parts of that day so they happen by default. Build an environment that nudges you toward the behavior you want. Remove easy access to temptations and place the cues for good habits in plain sight. Make the first step tiny and the reward immediate. Track your progress so your effort becomes visible. Over time, those systems reduce reliance on raw willpower and replace it with a structure that faithfully serves you even on the days you feel tired. Do not be afraid of failure. Instead, welcome it as instruction. Slips will happen. Plans will bend. The important thing is not to wait for perfection, but to cultivate the ability to restart quickly and without shame. When you fall off a routine, treat the fall as data, ask what changed, and make one small adaptation to remove friction next time. Keep your standards kind but firm. Aim for consistency over perfection, and remember that the pace of change is often nonlinear. There will be quiet periods of apparent stagnation where results are invisible, followed by sudden visible growth that surprises you because the groundwork has been accumulating beneath the surface. Trust that process. Trust the slow algebra of small things adding up. Finally, be kind to the person you are becoming. Habit work is not a punishment, it is an act of care. When you choose small things that honor your long-term aspirations, you are being generous to the future you. Speak to yourself with the voice you would use for someone you love embarking on a difficult but important change. Celebrate micro-wins and treat setbacks with compassion. Build systems that make it easier to keep your promises to yourself. Surround yourself with people and places that amplify who you wish to become rather than those that anchor you to a lesser version of your own potential. So, take a breath and pick one modest, vivid action you can do today that your future self will thank you for. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. Track it. Repeat it. When the days add up, and they will, you will find that the course of your life has quietly, steadily, and beautifully shifted. This is not an abstract promise. It is a practical invitation. Start small, be kind to yourself. And let the compound power of tiny habits quietly transform what you can do, who you are, and how you feel about the life you are building. Thank you for listening and for bringing your attention to this gentle, powerful work. Even your one subscribe can help me grow. So please subscribe. How did you like this book? And if you have any comments about atomic habits, please let us know in the comments section.
Thanks for watching. Like it video, share, subscribe, and keep smiling. Wait for you. Bye-bye.